The story begins in the garden of the house where Alice was sitting with her sister. Then Alice fell asleep, and suddenly she saw a white rabbit running near her, and he had pink eyes. The rabbit took a watch out of his pocket and shouted, "Oh my God, I will be very late." Then he jumped and ran away, so Alice ran after the rabbit, and after running after the rabbit for a short time, they reached a small hole, and when she saw the rabbit entering that hole, she decided to follow him immediately. She entered after the rabbit, and at that moment she felt that she was falling into a very deep and dark well, and it took a long time to fall. Alice fell on a pile of grass and leaves and saw the rabbit running in a long corridor in front of her, so she stood up and continued running after the white rabbit, and after that, the rabbit turned and disappeared from her sight. She continued on her way until she reached a large hall with a low ceiling, and the hall had many doors, all of which were locked. And in it was a small table, and on it was a golden key. Alice tried the key on the doors, but they did not open, and there was a small gate behind a curtain. Alice tried to open it with the golden key, and indeed the gate opened, and it led to a large garden, and Alice could not pass through. So she returned to the table and saw a bottle on which was written, "Drink me," so she drank it, and immediately its size shrank, and she was able to cross to the garden. And there she saw a small house, and she entered the house. And that was the house of the Duchess, who was preparing for a game of croquet. And when the game of croquet began, Alice stood with the Duchess's procession, and the croquet field was strange because it was full of holes and bumps. The balls were living hedgehogs, and the bats were living birds too. The players began to play fighting over the hedgehogs and making a mess. The game was boring and messy for Alice, and she wanted to get out of here by any means until she was woken by her sister's voice, who was still sitting beside her in the garden, waking her up. She knew that everything she had seen was just a dream.